Earthquake update, building types, construction methods, a little bit about that. A little bit later I'll tell you a story about a building collapse that I was, my company, my scaffold shoring company was a little bit involved with. Our side stayed up, the competition did the other half of the building, their side fell down. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Got a video coming up here just in a couple of seconds about the construction method used on that building in Thailand that collapsed. Most of you have probably seen the video of that, and it's a unique construction method, and a lot of different types of construction methods, and they will vary by country, by regions, by the type of soil you have, by the budget, a number of different factors. Anyway, very, very interesting. More and more information is coming out. We'll talk more about that after this video here.
It turns out that this building was constructed by China Railway 10th Bureau, CR10, a Chinese company. It was called a Chinese Overseas Construction Showcase. Now it seems to be another powerful example of the Chinese Communist Party's shoddy construction projects being exported abroad. This 30-story building used a unique core tube plus beamless floor structural system, a design that previously caused major safety concerns in Miami, Florida. Experts say that while this system offers high space efficiency, it poses special challenges for earthquake resistance. The collapse of a condominium in Miami in 2021, which resulted in 98 casualties, was caused by similar beamless floor systems that failed during a strong earthquake. It's worth noting that the China Railway 10th Bureau celebrated the completion of the main structure in April 2024. However, after the incident, they immediately deleted the related article. The removal of the celebratory article by China Railway 10th Bureau has been interpreted as a sign of guilt.
Very interesting. I found that video online, and I use it. If it's copyrighted, I use it because this is a news story, and you're allowed to use pictures and videos for news stories. Anyway, I've watched a number of different news stories coming out of various sources in Thailand, Myanmar, other places. Not so much Myanmar, pictures out of Myanmar. And vloggers talking about their experiences in living in Bangkok, and they've got one guy living on about the 6th floor. He said, yeah, I felt really dizzy. I thought I was dizzy, and then finally realized it was an earthquake. I've had somewhat similar experience in Cebu City. One time where I was standing still by the counter, and I felt dizzy standing there, and then I realized, well, no, this is an earthquake. Happened, I think, about 300 kilometers away, 140 miles, something like that, over by Leyte and or Surigao area. I felt, I think, 4 or 5, very, very small. If I wasn't sitting still, I would not have felt them. I felt a number when I traveled, and worked in California. So it's not anything new to me. I've done previous videos about risks and earthquakes and typhoons. Our building I'm living in Cebu City now, it withstood a 7.2 back in 2013. That happened between Bohol, closer to Bohol Island, which is very near to Cebu Island. Some cracks in the walls, but withstood it pretty well as the super typhoon, the high winds of super typhoon Odette in 2021 December, and I was in the condo 20 some floors up. And yeah, the lights were swinging just a little bit, and anyway, definitely was an experience. I've been in Hurricane Hugo in 1990 something, I think, in South Carolina area. One vlogger in Thailand said he's starting to see a lot of advertising already for low-rise condominiums, 1 to 8 stories, something like that. You got low-rise, mid-rise, high-rise. And he said, yeah, a lot of foreigners are talking about moving out of Bangkok, out of that area that was affected by the Myanmar earthquake. I've been in Cebu City, Philippines since 2015. Been doing videos since 2016. Do a lot of real estate videos, and I always ask the real estate brokers and agents, and a couple times engineers that I was able to talk to during open houses. What is the earthquake resistance of these buildings? And everybody has told me 8.2. Now that's huge. It's unlikely, but it's possible. Many places in the world, 8.2 before they start to become damaging. But you know, earthquakes come in many different types. Sideways, up and down, both sideways and up and down. Depends upon your soil conditions as well. Liquefaction, number of different issues that can affect the buildings. I feel pretty safe, and yet I've lived in 6 different condos in Cebu City, different areas, and some have much better escape routes. One in particular had very wide stairs at both ends of the condominium. Most condos have quite narrow stairs going up and down. And of course, if there's something serious, there's going to be not just you, but a whole lot of people trying to use those stairs as well. You definitely don't want to get into an elevator. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience managing a scaffold and forming and shoring company. Waco was the name of an international company in Phoenix back in the 90s. And we were working on a commercial project. We were doing half of a building. The experts, I think it was Safeway Scaffold, was doing the other. That they specialized in that. It was kind of part of what we did, but we did very little of it. So we were not the experts. But we had a system. Our system of forming and shoring was different than what's used, the type used by almost every other forming and shoring company. And my salesman on the job, he was furious with me. I had my engineer design the system, talking to headquarters back in Houston, and he came to me one time in my office and he said we have over designed this. We're never going to get another forming and shoring job. And he was really upset. And a few days later, the competition, their side fell down. Fortunately, there were only a couple injuries, no deaths involved in it. But our side stayed up, which kind of attested to the engineering and the system that we used. But failure of a system and this Myanmar and Thai collapses, there'll be engineers on site for months, I'm sure, trying to figure out what's going on. Another thing about the Chinese, our competition was using Chinese scaffolding. It came into Mexico. The Mexican companies turned it into scaffolding and shipped it into the U.S. And that stuff, very cheap, but a lot of these contractors, after they use it on one job, it would be all bent up and unusable, unrepairable. They would just throw it away as scrap because they were using what you call soft steel. Wasn't higher strength steel. Cost-wise, we could not compete with it. I think we did end up bringing in, and Waco had offices all over the U.S. and other countries as well. I think we brought in a truckload to our branch and other branches, and tried it. And a lot of it was just with the softer steel would bend very easily. Might even come out of the trailer when shipped, bent up a little bit. And then as it was manufactured in Mexico, the factory was doing a very poor job. Things wouldn't line up. holes weren't drilled properly. The various attachments didn't fit properly, and I think we ended up throwing away about half of it. But yeah, crazy. But yeah, you got the quality of your materials, and that's a factor around the world. The quality of your cement, the quality of your the wood, your if you're using stick built, um, the quality of just everything that you put into that. Then you have the skill, craftsmanship, the quality of the construction, the workers themselves. The welders, are they doing proper weld? Are they certified, and they making the welds good and strong the way they should be? Are the stories I've read a number of times over the years, especially as it relates to the military, bolts, and screws that are supposed to be very high quality, actually when they're tested, are extremely low quality, and they're coming in from other countries. You quote one thing, but you deliver something else, hoping you don't get caught, and it becomes a very, very high profit item. You have the ground and the preparation of the ground, the many different types of ground that you have to deal with. Even here in Cebu City, J Center Mall, some of you have been there, immigration used to be there, and they're building J Tower condominium just on the very near there. And I would go over for coffee once a week with a friend, meet him there, and I'd always go and look at the construction when they were doing the groundwork, and they were pouring cement, pouring the foundations. There was one time there were a lot of suits, a lot of people in suits down there, engineers and owners of companies, I suppose, and they're looking down at this the pouring the cement, and it was very obvious that it did not look right. It did not look like it filled the voids properly, and talking to they've got these little stands with police around Cebu, and yeah, sat and talked to him if there was been any trouble. Didn't used to see that, but you're seeing it more and more here. Anyway, where was yeah, the J Towers condominiums over in Mandawi City, and within a couple of days they had big equipment in there, and they were removing all of that groundwork, all of that foundation work, and redoing it. So the good news is that they caught it. They caught it, and they redid it and made sure it was done properly. You know, with all building, I sold building supplies and industrial supplies in the Midwest USA back in gosh, what was it, 80s, I think, for a time. And during 1973, the big energy crisis, when I think because we supported Israel, Egypt, or Saudi Arabia cut off our oil prices went up, and the cost of energy, heating your home, and up there it's cold winters, so underground homes became more popular. People were starting to build underground homes for the insulative properties. And I became aware later of a contractor that they're supposed to use stainless steel nails underground, and or triple galvanized nails was the code. And I learned that this one particular contractor that was working in South Dakota uh, had ordered just plain galvanized nails instead of the triple galvanized. But he had quoted triple galvanized and or stainless steel, and then he was replacing it with something cheaper. Don't know if he ever got caught. It was sometime after that I found out about it. Now, some good news. Long discussion talking about building here in the Philippines. The good news, there was a 7.2 earthquake that happened off the coast of Bohol in 2013, and it did damage to a convention center over in Mandawi City, right across the street from Park Mall, and they're now in the process of tearing that down. They're going to replace it. I thought it was going to be a hotel, casino type area, but no, it's going to be a government center. So they're replacing it. And why that facility had damage? It was a very wide span. You can see that it's the way it's built, very wide spans and use of large open spaces may be part of the issue with that. Anyway, yeah, these architects, there's a number of issues that I'm aware of in the U.S. I think there was an architect that designed a concert hall, something like that, in Kansas City, and the roof collapsed. This was decades ago, and I may be wrong on the details, but he never was able to show his face again in that business. He did not design it properly. The roof basically collected water. The weight of the water and a heavy rain caused the roof to collapse. He didn't have proper drainage, something so simple like that. So yeah, foolish little mistakes. But yeah, like I said, the good news is that there was an inspection of all the buildings, or the major buildings in Cebu City, Mandaue City, Lapu-Lapu on Mactan Island after that earthquake, and very little damage. You'd get some cracks in walls, but cracks in walls are, that happens as buildings settle as well. I have a British friend that lives on the same floor I do, 20 floors up in my condo, and he said he was here during that, and he said, yeah, it shook. He definitely felt it and caused some concern. He said the tiles, his walls were tiled, small little tiles on his bathroom. He said they fell off the wall, so he had to redo that. But other than that, no damage. So that is good news. And in my previous video I looked into this area. Seems to be relatively protected from earthquakes historically for over 100 years. Cebu City, Negros Island, Panay Island. But yeah, anything can happen anytime. When I was managing the scaffold company in Phoenix, Arizona, my engineer told me we have a 0 rating, meaning there's no chance of earthquakes in Arizona, 0. So when you're designing buildings and scaffolding, but there was a minor earthquake sometime later, and so it went up to a 1 risk rating, 1 or 2, I forget what it was, but yeah, I think it happened over on the border of Arizona and California. My biggest concern when I lived in Arizona and Nevada as well, Las Vegas, Nevada, for many years, it was the water situation in Phoenix. I had read many years ago that they're using so much groundwater that the land is actually lowering. And I forget how much. Was it an inch a year, or some part of an inch a year, or something like that? I don't remember. But yeah, you're taking the water out, and the ground is dropping. I know developers years ago, and I think they still have to do that. They have to, if they're going to make a new subdivision, for instance, they have to show that they have access to 100 years worth of water. That was the rule back then anyway, something like that. And so they would buy up all the land, as much land as they could around their subdivision, because then they had access to that groundwater and say, yeah, we own all this water, we have access. Well, that water can disappear. Somebody else 20, 40, 50 miles away is sucking, another subdivision is sucking water out of that, and it's pulling from that area. Or there can be a shift in the ground itself, which will affect the water tables. All sorts of things that can happen long term. Even here in the Philippines, Cebu City, they're building desalination plants for the water to use seawater and take the salt out of it and use it. I think they've got one or two up and running already, and several more planned. So that's good news. People that had shallow wells during the droughts, 2015, 2019, 2023, I think. Yeah, the shallow wells would run dry. The deep wells would maintain water, fortunately. But as the cities get bigger and bigger, the water usage becomes more and more, and there's a need to desalinate for sure. I've experienced typhoon here, big super typhoon. I experienced Hurricane Hugo in the U.S. Very strong, scary. I've experienced a couple tornadoes. One when I was in high school, I think. Big storm outside. Everything got real quiet. My mother said, "Everybody in the basement." And I was halfway down the steps to the basement. Heard like it sounded like a freight train coming right over the top of our house, but did not do damage to our house other than a few shingles blown off, I guess. A couple years later, it went through our grove, our tree stand right behind our house, took out a big section of that. Driving, I've seen a couple of them off in the distance. Tornadoes to me are more scary. Earthquakes, most of these buildings are going to withstand most of those. Typhoons, you can kind of prepare a little bit, depends on where you're at. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Safe travels.